Up next, we have a fireside chat. What's your reaction when we say the age of wishful thinking is over? Is it really? Let me simplify it for you. Agencies must have a laser focus on hard data in the age of data and exposure. And the combination of immediate requirements with long-term strategy is like a cherry on the top of the cake if you genuinely want to thrive. Our next session is going to be on the subject, time for change, how real-time metrics can help your agency make data-driven decisions. It's all about metrics and data. And for this discussion, he's been up here so many times, I think we don't need to introduce him again. And wonderful, Venkat, thank you so much for stepping in. Amazing. He's fantastic, wonderful speaker. And joining him is going to be Daria Yadernaya, Head of Business Development, Sales and Marketing at Frame Group. Please give them both a nice round of applause. Back again, Venkat, fantastic. So I'm looking forward to this fireside chat between the two of you. So just pick up a couple of mics. You're becoming a superstar here this 3 days. It's great.
Okay. Hi, guys. I guess you're seeing me too often now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'll let Daria introduce herself first.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you all guys here. My name is Daria Yadernaya. I'm the head of business development, sales, and marketing in Frame Group, which is a complex marketing agency focused on market research, mostly consumer-driven, data-driven decisions. And today we're going to talk mostly about how data could do good for your business, but at the same time, how not to overwhelm yourself with data and not lose track of what's actually happening with your business.
Sure. So I think real time itself, right? That's the keyword that I want to focus on, and how important is that in the first place, right? So we were just having a quick chat before we got here, and honestly, we've not had too much of time to ponder on these thoughts. But very quickly, I come from a digital agency, and we run hundreds of campaigns every month for multiple clients. Now, the thing is that the importance of reporting for us is paramount when it comes to media, because obviously monies are involved, and then there's also the expectation of results from that money. And it's not a lot of times that real-time data can give you all the insights that you're looking for, but at some points it may be important. So I think the whole idea of this discussion is to figure out, or what you guys should take out of this is, what are those metrics that would really add benefit or value to you that you track real time, and what are some of those metrics that you may not need to look at every second, right? So
yeah, it's kind of a funny analogy that came up to me. It's like big data today, as if you were a kid standing in a store full of candies, and you're like, okay, I want this candy and this candy and this. There's so many candies. Oh my God, I want to do chocolate and I want to do gummies and I want to do this and that and that. So we're all kind of overwhelmed with data. It's not the problem of the shortage of data. It's more the problem of abundance of data. And we have been just talking about that. The consumers sometimes get so overwhelmed with data, they don't know what to look at anymore. Yeah. And that's why sometimes it's very hard to track progress of your marketing campaigns or progress of what you're doing with your customers, just because you're looking at all the wrong data. And vice versa. I see a lot of startups who get so plunged in the data that makes them look good for the investors. They select the figures that look great, and they forget about the figures that actually show performance. So it's not about the fact whether we need real-time data or not. We definitely need data at all times. But it's more about like what kind of data we're looking at. And we have just been talking about this.
Yeah, so I think it's the right metrics that you need to define. And again, I'm going to go back to the marketing funnel. So I know you guys probably hate me for that already. But so let's say that you want to build awareness for your brand, and the idea there is reach and frequency, right? I mean, that's typically what you'd measure at the top of the funnel, and their impressions are very important, right? So from a digital standpoint, I'm talking obviously. I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment on TV and print, etc. But purely from a digital media perspective, yeah, you look at the amount of audiences that you reached and the impressions. But is that something that you're going to want to look at every day? I don't know, is the first answer. The second thing is, when you go down to the mid of the funnel, you're looking at typically engagement-led KPI, like likes, shares, comments, or clicks that happen on your to your ads and go on to visits to your landing page. Again, is that real time? Is that something that you want to look at real time? I don't know. Again, right? So maybe unless and until you're doing like an influencer outreach campaign, right, where you have a hashtag that you want to measure, that's one instance of what you would want to track real time. But most often than not, when you go, to the end of the funnel and when you're talking about purchase or trial, even if you look at data that comes in and it appears to you like it's real time, it's probably not, because well, there are different ways in which the conversion itself gets attributed. So there's obviously, a last click metric, there's a time decay, or there's probably even data-driven attribution. So data-driven attribution works on a weighted average. The last click typically means that the conversion was attributed to just that last click. So, and most often than not, most of the platforms that today record these conversions have some sort of a delay in recording those conversions in the first place. So the term real time itself is a little convoluted, but what's the best you can do to sort of, work around that is what really this discussion is about, right?
Speaking of digital, an interesting, kind of example that came to my mind might sound a little bit theoretical. You have to forgive me because I'm also lecturing at the university. So whenever you ask a teacher a question, you always expect a really long answer. So speaking of that, like when we do digital marketing campaigns, and it's always the big question whether the data that we have is on real, actual customers, or this is the data about our followers, people who just like our images, they like it, they post, they comment, but they actually don't buy anything. So the big question our client asks us is like, what sense does it make for me to have this big coverage and this big awareness if I don't sell at the end of the day? And we have been talking about those consumers. There is a special term for them. We call them falsumers, like false consumers. So those who behave like consumers, they like, they repost, they comment, they save, they do everything, but they don't buy. And like 5 years ago, they would have told you, okay, they are completely useless. We need to chase only the buyers. Right now, what we say, okay, this is very wrong. They're actually very important to us because they create awareness. They're gatekeepers to the brand. They might not be buying, but they create the buzz. And the buzz is very important for our ultimate customer. Our ultimate customer might be super busy, so they don't have time for social media like at all, which kind of means, do we miss him or her? No, we don't. We target those prosumers who have all the time in the world to be there, living their life in the social media. But then they talk to our clients in offline real world, and they work as gatekeepers. They will promote our product. So they will be our brand ambassadors without actually being the buyers of the product. So today we're going to say prosumers, super important. So we need them. They might be surrogate customers, aka like you promote furniture. You have a furniture client, and you have the guys who follow you, they're interior designers. Are they buyers? Like, not really, no. But they're very important because they ultimately sell it to their clients. I buy an apartment, I get an interior designer, he or she tells me what kind of furniture I should get. So I haven't seen this promotion, but my surrogate customer saw it. So it's also an interesting fact to understand about the data. So maybe we do this promotion of furniture, I don't get any immediate purchases because the life cycle is so long. And I also probably even don't get that many views as they wanted because I'm not IKEA. I'm sorry, like I'm not IKEA. So I don't get 1 million views for my campaign. But I probably only targeted 100 people who looked at this YouTube video, but they're all interior designers. So within a coming year, I'm going to get an influx of buyers just because I did it right now.
No, I think, adding to that point, so different industries need to keep track of different metrics and at different time intervals. I mean, it's not like a one-size-fits-all sort of, approach that you can take when, especially, I'm talking from the perspective of being an agency that's a custodian or a gatekeeper to like 20 brands, for instance, right? So I cannot typically apply the same rule on all of them and expect them to be working perfectly fine. And it's not the same data sets that I report across all the campaigns. So for instance, so if I'm, like I said, if I'm running an awareness campaign, though I'm reporting daily almost, I wouldn't call it real time. It's not like I'm reviewing that data daily. I'm going to give it some time. I'm going to look at a trend and then go back and then optimize the campaign, right? So So most people would probably ask this question: what is really the typical lifespan of, let's say, a video ad today, or a piece of video content on YouTube? I'm going a little off the topic, but uh, earlier it was around 10 days. Today it's come down to 3 days, and that's really largely, because of the way in which our attention spans have sort of come down drastically, right? So I mean, all of these factors go into understanding what are the right type of reports that you need to have. What does your dashboard need to look like? So a lot of data may end up being way more confusing rather than giving you a direction. So you need to basically cherry pick and customize what are those metrics that you want to report on real time versus, let's say, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. I mean, that's how I'd look at it.
This is so. I mean, I could not agree more. And always think about the trend. Don't think about what's happening momentarily. Right now, we live in uncertain times. Everything changes all the time. We get this pandemic, we get the lockdown, then no lockdown. We get a lot of political turbulence all around us. Consumers react. Sometimes consumers react to weather. So you launch a marketing campaign, but the weather is wrong, so it just doesn't work because of the weather. So we have to look at the average trend. You're so right. I mean, think about one of the everyday metrics. Well, I see quite a few girls that you probably girls track, which is the weight. So every day we stand on the scale and we check our weight. And then if it's a little bit bigger, it's like, oh my God, something's wrong. That's because of that pizza I had yesterday or something wrong. But then it's not because of that. It's just because probably you had something salty before going to bed, so some extra water. But probably you took a long flight to come here. Again, it's going to affect your weight. Even if you had a very long, excruciating workout yesterday, it's going to affect your weight. So what we do, if you want to track our weight, we track it every day, but then we look at the trend. So with those ups and downs, but the trend will tell you if you're losing weight, if you're gaining weight, if you're in the same weight. So this is the same approach we kind of need to apply to marketing.
No, absolutely. I think you can't really so for instance, I run a couple of campaigns for e-commerce clients, and then there are, so these guys are obviously queued into, their, e-commerce backend, and all they really care about is when are the sales coming in, right? So it's almost as if they're waiting for that order to come in. And it's so difficult for us to actually go in there and explain to them that, there are multiple reasons because of which this conversion may have happened, right? And this brings me back to the whole attribution point of, discussion here. So how was that sale attributed to who is really important. And that's not something that you can actually determine real time. So there's also, assisted conversions that play a large role in defining the actual amount of conversions at the end of the day. And therefore, the weightage cannot be just given to one last click that you did, right? So it could be that you were served the ad 5 days back on, let's say, a video, and then if we followed you through with, with a display ad, and then you finally sort of clicked on it after you were served that ad 5 times. So which one of these interactions do I attribute that conversion back to becomes a paramount question. And that's why we can't really do this on a daily or a real-time basis. Daily is still fine. At the end of the day, you go back and basically log those numbers in. But real-time, it's good to have like a high-level summary of stuff, right? That gives you or your business an understanding of where it's headed. But to be able to try and make sense out of that every day is maybe not the right thing. Exactly. You can report it every day, but do you want to look at it every day is, again, a question you want to ask.
You definitely don't want to do that every day. Again, if you guys are from some country that has a fluctuating currency rate, do you look at it every day? If you do, you probably start panicking because, the currency rate is like crazy. You're counting your money. Am I getting more money? Am I getting poorer? What's happening? You don't do that every day, but in the long term, you want to watch it. Yeah. Another thing, like I wanted to kind of stress, is that sometimes you should be looking for the data that is not there, that is not what you have. I started my career in fashion like 13 years ago, and the first recommendation my boss at the time gave me, she told me, don't look at the items that sell so well, look at the items that don't. They're not in your report. You're going to get the sales report. You're not going to get the not sales report. But this is exactly what you're aiming at. Maybe this dress is awesome. Everybody tries it on, but it's just a little bit too short. So it's a great dress. You have to keep producing it. It's a great style. Just make it a little longer. Maybe you need to change the color of the dress. Again, everybody touches it, everybody wants it, but something teeny tiny is wrong about it. Maybe you're showing it in the wrong way or styling it in the wrong way. So sometimes thinking about the data, don't think also about the data that you have. Think about the data that you don't have and why you don't have it. Like probably you launched 2 media campaigns and they're both great, but one is better than the other. So the better than the other kills another campaign. It's a great campaign. You just probably should keep it back, wait some time, launch it later, not two at a time, because one is cannibalizing on another. So think about, the some interrelations they might have.
No, I think also what's important to understand is that today there are a plethora of tools available for you to track these metrics, right? It's not just one single source of data anymore. And I'll just give you a small example, right? So when you run a campaign on Google, for instance, right, what AdWords reports to you is very different from what analytics reports to you. There is a delta there. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to like quote a percentage here, but that is a fact. Also, time zones are pivotal, right? So for instance, I mean, if you're running a campaign based in, you're sitting in India and running a campaign, but the ad server that you're actually using is, let's say in the United States, you already have a 12-hour difference right there. So is that data even real time for you is the question you've got to ask yourself. And yeah, a few instances where it's absolutely critical is, I would say today, if you're running an influencer campaign or an influencer outreach campaign where, like I said earlier, hashtags and engagements are something that's pivotal to you. Those are real time in a way because you have social listening tools today, like, that would be able to track what's going on. What is the sentiment of the audience? Again, sentiment may not be important for you to track on a real time basis because you would have absolutely no idea of, if you cut that time segment down to like the last 10 minutes and see what's the sentiment. I mean, imagine that you're getting, like, say, 100 odd comments or interactions or engagements in the day, and you've only analyzed like 2 of them in like 1 hour, right? And what are you going to take out of that? Is that even an actionable sort of metric for you? No, it's not. So you've got to wait it out till the end of the day, probably in this case, and see what was the sentiment. But at the same time, if you're talking about the volume of tweets coming in or mentions coming in, now that can be a real-time metric because that sort of determines whether you're trending on Twitter or not. Just an example.
Yeah, you know what you said is kind of very simple, but I kind of just realized that I'm not actually doing that. Like we have our offices in Dubai, in Russia, and in California.
Yeah.
And I just realized that I'm not actually, well, I kind of know about the time difference because we do business meetings, but I don't really bear that in mind when I track the data.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
No,
That was,
perfect.
is kind of, something super simple, but something I have never actually thought about. So that's like awesome. Another thing to consider is like what kind of content you're putting in front of your consumer, because if this, they say, again, like a small lecture intercourse, they say there is like 2 types of content, the hero and the hygiene.
Yeah.
So if you're putting there the hero content, you want all the real-time metrics you can squeeze out of there because you're in the moment. When it's hygiene, it's more, the evergreen content is going to be accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. So it's a type of a YouTube thing, like how to change a diaper for a kid, sponsored by, a diaper company. Yeah, it's not going to get immediate influx of. So why would you want to look at real-time data? You want to wait and see how it works for you, like long-term. But if this is a fashion show that I'm doing tonight, I obviously want as much coverage as I want to get. So again, kind of differentiating between why we're doing this and
Sure.
whether we need the real-time metrics in this respect.
No, also, I have the opportunity to sort of run and set up a command center, which typically for a large enterprise, and that gave me a lot of insight into understanding what is it that they want to look at a daily basis, a real-time basis, monthly basis, etc. And who is the audience that's consuming that data also becomes very, very critical, right? So, for instance, if it's about customer service, it needs to be real time. There is no two ways about it. But if you're talking about the management trying to, forecast what the next year looks like, you can't base that on what's happening today or like in the last 3 seconds, right? You've got to look at it over a period of time. And there are multiple tools, there are multiple views that you need to configure to be able to get that data out. So I think it's more about the data that you present real time that has an impact rather than basically, giving them the whole spread. Like, here you go, this is the Excel sheet, why don't you look at it, right? That's only going to open up a can of worms. And well, too much is not good sometimes.
Oh, this is what's happening. Like clients tell us, we want to get all the data we can possibly get, and we tell them, trust us, you don't want all the possible data you want to get. You want us to work on it and tailor it and make an infographics for you, so you just get what you want. And it's getting even worse with the data that we collect from clients, because we are a market research company. So we have to collect this data not online, whether it's transparent and not tampered with. It's the data that consumers themselves can tamper with, the data that they provide to us, which is sometimes very kind of tricky. We had this super funny case with a beauty brand who asked us to work on their loyalty program. So we wanted to explore what they have in their loyalty program right now and develop mechanisms to boost their sales for different categories depending on who the customers are, whether they're the VIPs or the frequent but small check, or the dormant ones, etc. And the first thing that we were looking at is like what data they provide the customers when they fill out this card. And I tell my clients, do you see this clear discrepancy between the age that consumers put in their cards about their birthday, like how old they are, and what kind of cosmetics they actually buy? Have you noticed that all these women who are aged 30 something, they keep buying those things for 50 plus? And do you understand why this is happening? They're like, well, we thought they're just super aware of themselves so they would look as good as possible. I'm like, no, this is because essentially they lied about their age. They don't want to report their age. And they're like, oh my God, but we have been targeting all those campaigns on 30 plus something to them. I'm like, yeah, this is the problem, that we are so used to trust the data. I mean, it's the data, so it should be reliable. But sometimes those small things, like when you just look deeper in the data, tells you probably don't want to do that. So sometimes you want to go beyond the data.
I think that's a brilliant point you brought up there. I think the authenticity of the data again is key here, right? I mean, like, you can't base your analysis of data that you have that has no credibility, right? And that's where it goes back to understanding what are the type of sources of data that you want to plug in to be able to monitor that dashboard, right? So simple example is, today almost everyone has an API that you can connect with, and you could probably, and I'm sure that there are already real-time dashboard tools available in the market, right? But the question there is, what is the extent of customizability available to you as a business? Now, as a small business, you're not going to want to have the metrics that a large enterprise needs to measure, right? You need to be way more agile, way more quick. You need to sort of turn things around far more quicker than a large enterprise, because a large enterprise probably has multiple levels of approvals and protocols in place already to sort of streamline their processes and the way things work there. A small company is evolving, right? So again, I think that brings us back to who is looking at that data, right? For us to be able to make sense out of it. So the CEO of a company probably needs to see something else from the marketing manager, is what I'm saying. And does the CEO necessarily need to look at real-time data? I don't know. But does the marketing executive need to look at it? Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to an extent, right? I mean, of course, to the parts that they need to be, that concern them. When we've sort of gone back to them with insights later, that would be a separate discussion altogether.
So yeah, and again, this brings us back to the fact that right now, talking about data, we mostly think quantitative data, but we forget about qualitative data. So speaking about this small company, I would rather say you probably don't want all the quantitative data in the world. You're small, you're evolving, your clients that come to you at first, the trendsetters are not the same who are going to come later. So it doesn't really even make sense probably to focus on those small figures. But quality information is something you really need. And again, it's not just about the many figures that we have, but it's more about the quality insights that we can get. And this is something you really want to do real time, because this is something that actually changes. The figures, they might take quite some time before they change. Like you sell this blueberry yogurt and it's your bestseller. Next year, it's still your bestseller, but you can already see this coconut kind of rising and the Greek yogurt kind of, but it's going to take a lot of time before you focus on that, before you understand that, because the figures will tell you this is still your bestseller, no problem, you're doing just great, and it's increasing and increasing. So probably you want to do the qualitative data and actually talk to your clients and figure out what they feel and how they feel and why they're selecting that kind of product. So it's also about, combining this research, not to be overwhelmed with figures and figures and figures, more than like seeing the quality part of the things. So in this respect, working with an agency, you rather want to talk to your agency rather than to just get a report.
Yeah.
You want to talk to them, not just like, oh, I'm looking at those figures, I'm getting a heart attack.
It's not about that Excel sheet or the dashboard. It's about what you summarize out of it, the insights that you're able to pull out of that, and the frequency with which you're going to be sharing that with obviously your client. In this case, I'm an agency, so that's how I'm wired to think. But yeah, any sort of comments, any questions so far?
Yeah, guys, feel free to jump into our discussion. If you guys have your own cases to share or things to comment on, we'll be more than happy.
So okay, so we have
First of all, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Honestly, very interesting. From your discussion, I noticed that there's two different layers of how we can classify real-time metrics. It's what actually the team that is running the campaigns has access to, which is absolutely real-time, and they're looking at it on the daily. And then there's what you're portraying to the client, which is the reporting, the dashboards that you were talking about. And yes, that's where we have to highlight the metrics that matter and not overwhelm. The idea is by the way, this is not a question. I'm just
sure.
firesiding with you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, please.
Thanks.
So with that, in terms of the first side, having access to that real-time data, how often do we really optimize? Like you said, it can't be a day-to-day thing. Every time you make a change on the platform, it starts learning again, it restarts. So, but it's important to know that we have it. Looking at it enables us to drive those data-driven decisions. Automation through the dashboards gives the client that level of accessibility, which means less back and forth on Excel reports, which allows us as the agency to have more time to do the qualitative part. So I'm happy you mentioned the qualitative part at the end as well, because automation enables us to invest our time using our brain and not doing admin work and just data extraction, which is the main driver of or enabler of the data-driven decisions at the end and driving that success.
So I think that's a brilliant point you made here today. I think almost everything, and I think the last 2 days, all we've been hearing a lot of is AI and machine learning, right? And that's sort of what this paradigm shift in the way that the larger biddable platforms have been operating is really true, right? So, I mean, I can talk about 3 years back and how we used to set up campaigns then versus how we do it today. And we would have like 200 different ad groups and like multiple zillions of keywords, and typically go into like a frantic frenzy to be able to optimize them on a daily basis. But what's happened in the last 2 years is that there's been a paradigm shift in the way that the machine learning and for instance, Google has Google Signals, Meta has its own suite of data that they collect from across all of their platforms, and they use these signals to basically send back information to the campaigns and how they're performing, and essentially serve those ads to only those people that have the highest propensity to convert, right? So now in all of this, there's a very robust mechanism that both of these large publishers have, and for that mechanism to get into play is going to take a while, right? So you can't basically go in there and let's say that you have a campaign that you've sort of put up, and the objective there is, let's say, conversions. I'm just coming to conversions right away because that's typically
what all the clients
that's
want.
what matters. Right. So you set up that campaign and you take it live, and I can guarantee you this, right? So unless and until you don't get like the first 50 conversions in, let's say, the first 1 week, and you need a week for that campaign to breathe. Again, you need to let that system sort of learn from the available resources that it has to be able to give the campaign life. You can't just go in there and alter your bid, or you can't go in there and change your audience, because what that in effect means is that it's going to take another 1 week for the campaign to learn. So in this case, would it be fair for the client to actually go in and judge whether this campaign is working or not on a real-time basis? I don't think the answer should be yes. The answer should be, yeah, let's wait it out. And that's really why we go back there and say that, give it a couple of weeks, because that's what, and to be fair, Google and Facebook would recommend at least a 20 to 25 day learning period for any campaign that you have with sort of a very, very, targeted audience, or, a conversion criteria that's really bottom funnel. So,
well, I totally agree, especially when we deal with more long-term strategic things, because we help change the product mix, the brand positioning, we do rebranding, You don't see the results of your rebranding or brand positioning or developing your brand platform like in a week. It's just not going to happen. It's very, very long period of time. And at the same time, something I'm going to say right now doesn't work to the benefit of the market research agencies at all, but I'm going to say it anyway. Right now, when we get the clients who want to do market research, we sometimes tell them that I'd rather take the same amount of money and spend it on test trial sales. So, we all know the market research is costly. I'm not going to say it doesn't work or anything. It does work, and you have to keep track on the market. But at the same time, if you want to launch a new product, it doesn't really make sense to spend a lot of money talking to your clients about this product. It's cheaper and faster to develop this product and put it in one of your point of sales and see how it works. This is going to take the same amount of time, compiling a questionnaire, test trialing it, talking to the clients, analyzing, processing, developing a report. It's going to take the same amount of time, but then you're going to see the actual conversion that the clients are looking for. So I'm going to tell them, let's do the test trial sales. If it works, we're going to try and market it in scale and conduct the research at the same time, putting this MVP out there, developing this MVP and talking to the clients at the same time. If it doesn't work, again, we come back and talk to the clients to figure out why this doesn't work. But we already have something real to talk about. Again, so it's about, sometimes we act without data at all, but, budget-wise, it's the same budget to get the data. So it doesn't matter whether we conduct this research and collect the data or we sell it to conduct the data. Now it's getting even more complicated than that because the pace is even faster. So they say even this agile doesn't work anymore. So while you're test trialing it, the market changes. So when you're ready to market, it's too late. So now sometimes, depending on the price and the cost of this entrance to the market, sometimes I would even tell my clients, don't do a test trial, do all in. Because all the trends and everything, all do all in. And we're going to support it with a company and the campaign like yours. So, take the budget, market, plus your campaign, and then we're going to get the same results rather than taking this very long preparation period of time and then somebody else just, cut you through and then they put it in the market first.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, not just because I'm an agency, but but yeah, anyways, having said that, I think the other part that you need to keep in mind is, how do you structure this whole process, right? I mean, the process is paramount, and we haven't touched upon too much on the process bit, but yeah, so I'm saying that you need to understand and set those expectations very clearly, when you're on this side of the table. You need to ensure that you are the person that's essentially, as an agency, you're the custodian for the brand, and you need to go up there and tell them that, hey, listen, you know what, if you're running such and such campaign, this is what the expectation is going to be, and yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
Well, we are the agency who work result-based, so we don't actually charge for the report, but we charge for the KPIs that you're going to get after we implement this report, mostly. So for us, it's paramount to set clear goals and clear KPIs because it's not just about the client, it's also about us. So I tell my clients it should be like a win-win situation. So it's not just I'm setting those KPIs for your security, I'm also setting those KPIs for me so I can tell you this is what I can do and this is how much we're going to charge. If we surpass this expectation, we're going to get a bonus. If we do not perform or outperform, we're going to give you a discount on this. So there is some minimum fee that we're going to charge, but this is fluctuating. So it's very clear for the client how he is making money with us. So, okay, you invest in this data, you invest in this process, but you're making money. Same with advertising agency. Okay, they do spend a lot of money, but we know your average check, we know how much money you're going to spend. So we are also looking at your expectations, and sometimes we're going to tell you, okay, with how much you want to sell, you have to invest $1 million in your campaign, or this is not going to work. Because if they tell me, okay, I only have $100,000, it's not just going to work. I'm going to tell you, okay, I can do this. No problem. You pay me, I work, but you're not going to get your result. So it's not worth your while. So I would rather recommend you other ways of promoting your business. There are other ways, probably cheaper ways in terms of content creation, putting it in front of the customer, rather than, what we can do. What we can do will cost more, but the result is going to be this and that. So it's like, again, the clear expectations of, when, how much, and, who's getting at the end.
Brings me to a very interesting example. Like, so, I mean, one of the large cola companies was one of our clients, and typically we saw like a spike in uptake when the temperatures went up, right? And that's really crazy, because I mean, you're actually, if and that brings me to the point of the data that you're not seeing, right? So I mean, yeah, it was a logical correlation, but then you had to be able to track it to know whether it had an impact on sales. And yeah, again, but that's not real time, right? So you're not looking at it like, it's not going to be like 42 degrees and then 41 degrees, okay, we got like 5% less sales. It doesn't work that way. But over a period of time, you're able to say that, okay, you know what, this was a really, really hot month. And therefore, the average temperature through this month was, let's say, 40 degrees, and therefore there was an uptake, right? It's not like today was like 43. So yeah, that's all I'm saying.
How often do you review the KPIs that you send for the client?
That's a very good question. I think we look at it quarterly, obviously, and we also we do a weekly check-in for new clients that we've onboarded, because I mean, we need to handhold them till there's a level of comfort. But I'm not throwing data at them like on a weekly basis. It's more like, okay, we've checked in. Okay, these are the three sort of KPIs that we'd said that we're working towards, and this is the progress. So yeah, but at the end of the day, I think monthly is what we go back and tell them that, okay, this month this worked, this didn't work. And yeah, again, there are a lot of other things like seasonality, right? So there's festivals and stuff like that can impact the way in which campaigns work itself. So it can impact cost, for instance. So the festive period, there's hardly anyone actually on their mobile phones or browsing through the internet. And I mean, so for the audience that you would normally otherwise pay X amount of money to reach out to, you'd probably be paying twice as much. And yeah, that's how it is.
One last question to you before we pass our questions to the audience. So you work internationally with very different clients. So what is your expertise? Who is more obsessed with data? The US, the Middle East, just a kind of funny question while everybody's thinking about their questions to us.
To be fair, it's a very, very relevant question. But today what's happening is that people are so obsessed with data all over the place, right? It's not the US or the UK or India. I mean, like, I think it depends on what the organization's really into, and how evolved are they in that framework. But sometimes even like a startup can be extremely, extremely demanding in terms of data, because they have a point not to just prove to themselves but to their investors. And that's when it gets a little bit more complicated than it should normally be.
Exactly, and this is something I wanted to say. Like, in my expertise, the most obsessed with data are the Americans, but because the Americans depend so much, sorry guys, on the board of directors and on the investors. For example, we also deal with a lot of post-Soviet countries like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia, and those are more about general perspective. The vision, what's going to happen, etc. Because normally the owners are the CEOs. So this is their money, this is their business. So they're not that obsessed with every moment data, because they don't have to report to anybody but themselves. So they're more about, okay, I get it. Like, I'm spending money. Maybe I'm now spending more money than I wanted to, but tell me, is it going to work at the end? What's your expert opinion? So they're more about the general vision than the figures. Americans are more about the figures, so show me the figures, and then we're going to talk about the vision and the things like that.
Interestingly, I've had a different experience. I mean, I've probably just got lucky then in that case.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, so touch wood, I think. So I think it's the process ultimately, right? So if we've defined a process, and the good part is they want to stick to it, right?
Of course.
In where I come from, it's completely the other way around, right? So if there is a process, there will be 3 ways in which you don't want to follow that. And that's really what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happens, we're always ready to produce both, the vision and the real time, whatever our clients work. So guys, have you come up with any questions that you want to ask? Or a comment you want to make, a case you want to share?
Emma is there. She's going to get that.
I know. I just want to make sure you guys get to lunch on time. That's okay. Have any of you guys got any questions from the floor? Anyone want to come up and ask anything does that mean you covered everything? It was a really good chat. It was fantastic chat. Really enjoyed. So please give them a nice round of applause. Daria, I think you need to go and get some tea with some honey and lemon. I'm feeling for your voice right now.
It's fine. It's just the AC worked on me the first day. So.
Okay, but thank you so much. Brilliant
Thank
chat.
you.
Very informative. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Amazing stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And if we can get a nice photo of the pair of you in front there, that will be great.